Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us to the Leading for Wellness podcast. I'm super excited today to introduce our guest, Jim Tonkin. Jim is a legendary leader in the beverage industry with over 40 years experience. He is known by most in the industry as the Beverage Guru, especially in the functional and nutraceutical beverage segment. His career has a remarkable journey of entrepreneurship and success spanning from managing a West Coast 7-Up bottling operation to developing groundbreaking brands like Essentia Water, Hound Hydrators, Pat Water, Zico Coconut Water, and Brain Safe. Thanks so much, Jim, for joining us today.
It's great to be with you, Liesl. Thank you.
Yeah, so as we get started, for those of you who are not familiar with your amazing journey to where you are today, I would love you to share just a little bit about how you got started and some of the highlights of your career.
Sure, be happy to. It's kind of a circuitous journey that I took, and not one that I would have specifically thought about in my youth as the way I would end up in retirement. But as you mentioned earlier, I started my career working in a family business that my dad and great uncle owned, which was a 7-Up and allied beverage brands franchise operation in Northern California. I graduated from college in 1973 and worked for that company till 1982, going through a very extensive training program, starting at the bottom, working in those days on the bottle line, the production bottle line, producing 7-Up and A&W root beer, the entire line of crush beverages, Welch's, many brands that are still out in the market today, and worked my way up to be the VP of the company under my dad's tutelage. And I realized in 1982 that I'd been producing tons at that case. In that point, it was millions of cases yearly of carbonated soft drinks, which frankly have no nutritive value, as you well know. And so in 1982, we weren't even thinking about wellness. It was just not part of the landscape. But I had a burning desire in my gut to try to find something that was better for you. And we were putting a ton of sugar in each one of these carbonated beverages with flavor that came from the extract company that owned the brand, whoever we were producing. And we produced about 60 different products other than our own under a contract manufacturing facility, which was adjoined to our franchise operation. So we became the largest bottler and canner in the Western United States by 1982. Well, I woke up one day and just said, I can't do this anymore. And of course, my father was not very happy with me at the time, and I had no idea where I was going. And I resigned from my position and went to Hawaii and basically laid on the beach for 3 weeks trying to figure out what I was going to do when I grew up. And it wasn't really fun being unemployed. I had a great time working in my family business. Was lucrative. I had a super lifestyle, and but I gave it all up because something was internally bothering me. If your head and your heart and your stomach and everything is not all connected,
This doesn't feel right, right?
it doesn't feel right. So my entrepreneurial experiences started after I left the soft drink business. I started and sold a potato chip company. And then after that, I started and sold a cheese manufacturing operation, both in Northern California. And in 1985, a friend of mine was starting a bank in Northern California, and he asked me to join him because I knew a lot of people in the corporate world, and he was looking for deposits to start this bank. And so I went on a tear for about 3 months, raised about $46 million in deposits, and we were off and running. And in 1987, we sold 19 branches from one. We grew that operation to First Interstate. And then right after that, First Interstate Bank was purchased by Wells Fargo. So I didn't want to be in the banking business. I wanted to learn finance. And this guy was just an amazing mentor.
Was that intentional for you to learn the financial side of it? It's like, I
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
this, that's amazing that you had the foresight and that.
Well, and I'll tell you the reason, Lisa. It's I knew how to write checks and borrow money, because I'd done that for years, in the corporate world, and it was very easy to do. But really understanding how lending institutions work, banks, private equity, even family offices was really important to me. I could read a balance sheet, a financial statement, but understanding how they make credit decisions and things was an anomaly, and I just had no insight. So after 3 years of working in the bank, I even worked as an assistant credit administrator for about a year, which was amazing. So I sat in on all the loan decisions that were made at that bank on a monthly basis, and it was eye-opening, mundane, but it was great for me to understand when you go apply for capital, no matter who you're borrowing from, to understand the ins and outs. So in 1987, I hung a consulting shingle out, which basically meant, again, I was unemployed in those days. And
Great.
it took a couple of years before I stopped using my savings to support myself. And the rest is kind of history. 38 years in the consultative environment with healthy brand builders, developing everything from the ideation process at the beginning with somebody that has an idea, all the way through the exit to sell a company to a strategic or financial investor.
How amazing. I think probably looking back, that experience on how to handle finance and lending and, investments, et cetera, that's such a great foundation. And I'm sure even if it's not conscious, that experience really helped you a lot in your future deals. What are some of the exits that you're really proud of, and what beverages were you mostly involved with?
Well, we've had a number of very well known ones. I've had quite a number of small ones as well. But the ones that you'd be familiar with are Arnold Palmer Tea, which is a $1.5 billion brand today. That's an amazing story for another time. You mentioned Zico Coconut Water. Not only did we sell the business once for over 200 million in 2013, but we bought the brand back again in 2022, and we're
Incredible.
on our way to building it once again, called Zico Rising this time. Um, you're familiar with Suja Juice?
Absolutely. Yeah, they're here in our backyard in San Diego.
Exactly. So I was probably the fourth or fifth investor in Suja. And when Coca-Cola came a knocking, we sold a portion of our investment to them. So I cashed out my investment at that time and was riding on the upside, keeping my stock liquid, until we ended up selling once again. So that was a great ride. Um, Essentia Water, I was the first founding CEO, along with Ken Uptain, who was the founder, in 1997, and I exited there in 2001. But the brand sold finally in 2021, I believe, to Nestle for 650 million. And that was a great ride, wonderful product. It was probably the first in the space relative to a functional beverage, and functional in quotations, uh, based around the high alkalinity of the water. Now there's a million copycats in the high alkaline water, and there's machines that are out there that you can put on your countertop at home. So it's become kind of a staple in the water space, the same as flat water, if you will, or sparkling water or flavored water. So those are a few that were big ones and successful. And I will tell you, and I'm sure maybe we'll touch this a little bit, there were a lot more failures over 38 years. That we built over 2,000 brands in our portfolio, and many of them were privately, either put out of their misery with a big shotgun blast, or they filed for bankruptcy and went away, or were sold in a private transaction, or merged or acquired. So there's a lot of different ways that businesses get moved around that don't make the press. And that's where I really was able to use a lot of my understanding in the finance world, to bring those two things together and to help advise clients that were in our portfolio.
That's amazing. So you intuitively just sort of know, and you can look at a beverage and say, this is going to work or it's not going to work. Probably with all your experience. With the 40-year experience that you've had, where do you see wellness and functional beverage, industry moving into, this year and beyond?
I think it's a great question. Let me also just say to your overview there that there really is no such thing as being a soothsayer or having the golden keys to success. There's an awful lot of things, just like when you make something from scratch in the kitchen for dinner. If you make it by the right recipe, then you're probably going to come out okay at the end. When you start playing around with things, sometimes things get better, sometimes they get worse. The reality is there's a multiple of things, which could be a whole podcast in and of itself, that I looked for before I got involved with businesses. And that transcription grew from a very myopic view of things, like at the bottom of the inverted pyramid, to a very large group of things that I looked at before I even took a client on. And so if you can tick a few of those things off on your to-do list or
What
your
are those things? If you can
yeah,
share maybe the top
sure,
five things
sure.
that you look at, that'll be fascinating to
Yeah,
me.
I think the first and foremost is most businesses are people driven. Okay. I mean, even if you look at the successful ones that are out there, like Tesla today, I mean, Elon Musk is the guy that drove Tesla, pardon the pun, to the end zone, right? It was his brain trust, it was his shepherding of the business, it was his hiring of the people. And to that point, I'm very, very focused on the individuals at the top of the food chain in any small entrepreneurial or startup
So
business.
important. It's all about leadership. Yeah.
It is. And if you don't have the chops to be a leader, my suggestion, and I've talked many, many, many a person or group out of actually moving forward with an entrepreneurial idea, mainly because my assessment was they didn't have the chops to get to the end zone. Now, not having the chops to get to the end zone is not in and of itself a reason not to start a business, because people that are really smart and understand how to build a team understand that maybe they could build a company to $5 million or $20 million. To build a company to 100 or 200 or 500 takes a wholly different skill set, and most people do not intrinsically have that skill set. There's a lot of things that you learn.
Scale. Yeah. To
Yeah,
scale. Yeah.
right. So at the end of the day, what you end up finding when you adjudicate a new business, a startup, are the personnel. What's the idea? Is it a new idea? Is it a copycat idea? Is it something that came out of outer space and there's just no way that it's gonna be able to manifest itself into the U.S.? Um, has it been done before? Um, what are the I'm kind of getting into the weeds, but also what's the financial ramifications around the business? If it's a widget that we're building, can the widget make money? And when you look at all the different areas along that compendium, at the end of the day, if you can't make a good gross margin, it's very difficult to spend back against the support of a brand, like the marketing and the sales expense and all those things, which oftentimes eat up companies. They have a very low gross margin to start with because they just can't get a high enough retail price or direct to consumer price, whatever. Um, and they're not able to bring enough money to the bottom line. So the business will eke along for a while, but it'll drag forever on the negative side in the red numbers. And in today's world, by example, most players that are looking to purchase companies on the private equity or family office side, or even banks, um, they want companies with positive EBIT, with earnings before interest and taxes. So if you can't show a bottom line with some profit, it basically means you haven't got a business. So if you're running a business at 10 or $12 million and you're still losing $3 million a year, a lot of entrepreneurs or young people or people that start businesses, irrespective of their age, will use the excuse that when I get your money in my business, we'll be able to turn a profit, or it's just economies of scale will end up throwing more money to the bottom line. And those are really big fallacies. And most of the people that are in my orbit that I respect a lot in the industry are people that really understand that building a business has to do with profitability.
Mhm, mhm.
So if you can't get there, then there's really no reason to start the business because no one's going to fund a losing proposition for very long, right?
Yeah, it
So
takes time.
those are typical things that I look for. I'm not a copycat person. In our portfolio over all the years, I very, very seldom ever had two beverages or food products that were competing with one another. And it wasn't for a privacy perspective, because I had confidentiality agreements with everybody. It used to mean something in the old days, but um, I just felt like I needed to be very um, kind of attributing my effusive behavior, my energy, my heart. So I try to bring my brain and my emotional side to any deal that I get involved in because I think it takes all of it to be committed to success. And so I also invested in way over 75% of the businesses that I worked with over the years. So I had a stake in the process, and I think it made owners feel like my advice was worth listening to, because I had a stake in the outcome.
Yeah,
Right?
I think that does make a big difference.
Yeah.
So speaking about using your head and your heart, because I love that concept and I think we all operate. Do you operate more from your feeling or from, logic, from numbers and looking at data? So how do you typically make decisions as an
It,
investor?
it's a great question, and I usually separate them, but I use them together always. So I may look at a situation and just pour over the numbers and just take a look at it purely from a financial perspective. That's going to give me one perspective and an outcome. Then, if I take a look at the product and I see the emotional appeal that consumers may have and the connection that they'll develop with this product, then that's a whole nother set of principles
I
and
think that's your gift is
and
being
out.
able to see that,
Well, thank you for that. But as I said, I'm very humbled to say that I've had many failures in our 38 years of doing this, and I think anybody that hasn't learned from or experienced failure has really missed a part of the learning process. It's devastating, and nobody
It
wants to
is.
ever go through it. And after the fifth or sixth or 10th one that's gone down, you do these postmortems and you realize where the mistakes were made or what the false premises were that you built the business on, whether it's the staff or the management, you ran out of money. The consumer didn't really like the product. We thought this was the next coming of Christ, so to speak, and it really wasn't at all. And so consumers in the end are the ones that will tell you if you're going to have a success or not. Understanding consumer behavior and listening to your customer tell you what they think about your product is really, really important.
No, that is really key. And I think a lot of people don't do enough market research, in order to understand that. But I think there is a little bit of luck and a little bit of gut, and also to see just where the industry is moving. So from your, place, you've got 40 years of amazing experience. Here we are in 2025, and all of a sudden the beverage sector in the market is just exploding with all these functional new beverages that are coming on board. With your, glass ball, and all of your experience and heart into this industry, where do you see things going? And what do you think the new trends are that are going to be emerging, over the next few years?
It's a great question. I've had reporters from all the major newspapers and journals and things over the years have called me yearly for my prognostications. But since I retired in 2019, I'm kind of must be off the list now. Occasionally, I get them from the
You'll never
beverage.
retire, Jim.
Well, I'm still involved on lots of boards, and I'm still staying active to try to keep the old noggin working. But I would say there's any number of trends that are interesting to watch right now. Over the last 5 to 10 years, we've seen um, the first thing that's really interesting to me is the proliferation of the delivery system. So what I mean by that is in typical beverages have been sold in plastic bottles, large and small, with labels on them, et cetera. And we can just stick to the beverage space for a moment. And plastic, back in Mrs. Robinson's day, back in the early 70s when that movie came out with Dustin Hoffman and Anne Bancroft, on the periphery of the pool at a party, somebody was asking what's the next best thing, and this guy that was in the industry said plastics. Well, plastics totally changed the industry, and that's from a packaging and delivery perspective. We used to do a lot of things in the soft drink industry, as an example, in glass. And there still are companies out there that are selling product in glass, from bottled water companies to soft drinks. A lot of all the liquor companies are still in glass, very few in plastic. So glass is still a good delivery system. The negative side of it is it's heavy. It's heavy to ship. It's heavy to store. There's a lot of breakage. So a lot of people steer away from it, but it's a very sterile environment and a really good package, in my view. Moving away from the old days and then through the plastics space, we've also learned a lot relative to health and wellness, which is your world. Um, and what we've learned is there are all sorts of things that could be injurious to the human condition that are part of the plastics world. And it doesn't matter whether we're eating foods wrapped in plastic or beverages, we're drinking beverages out of plastic containers, um, or whatever. But plastics are in the middle of everything we do. Supposedly, they're very recyclable. And of course, we also know now that recycling in the US is a little bit of a joke.
Yeah.
We all have 2 or 3 cans outside in our front,
All goes into the same place.
and it all goes to the same place. And it's, what it really was an industry that was trying to convert American mentality to get with a new process, because at some point there will be a recycling stream, and there will be a stream that actually separates the garbage, and it won't go in the same garbage dump and be ground up and buried so that the product is still there for 100 years from now. But they'll be able to really recycle a lot of these things, and I really do believe that'll happen. It's just so costly to do it now. No one has been able to figure out how to do it for less cost. So thinking about that, there have been numerous new aluminum containers. When we started in the aluminum can business, it was actually steel. We used to make beverage containers in steel cans uh, before aluminum, back in the 70s and early 80s. And then aluminum came into the market, mainly because it was lightweighted and they could put a nice film on the inside, a protector to keep the beverage away from the can wall. And that lightweighted and sped up the process in canning. So cans are still a gigantic piece of our food and beverage space. But then past that, as an example, I invested early in a company called Path Water. And Path Water is a brand that uses no plastic at all. It uses an aluminum extruded bottle in a multiple of different sizes that has the only liner inside that is guaranteed from the manufacturer to be reusable and refillable and recyclable. All three of those R's, which is amazing. So from cap to the stern of the bottle, the whole thing is recyclable. Plus, the bottle can be reusable 5, 10, 20
It's a
times.
beautiful bottle. Yeah.
Thank you. And the private label side of that business has grown much larger than we ever thought it would when we first started. I was a very early investor in the company. I was in the first 5 board members that we ever had at the company. Now I'm just a sideline investor and kind of get the investor notes like everybody else, but I'm still very close to the 2 founders, and it's an amazing business that I think will end up selling at some point in the next couple of years. It's growing beautifully, but the people that are getting on the bandwagon, all sorts of corporate entities that are looking for logo identification and something to be able to give
Branding. Yeah.
customers that brand identification, are ordering both sparkling and still waters from Path, and it's we have 3 plants in the country now, started with 1 in Los Angeles. So the business has grown dramatically, and that's just an example of being very forward thinking. The 2 owners are very young
So
guys.
that one is more about packaging than necessarily the water.
It's all about packaging. It's 100% a
It's great
packaging.
water, but it's really the packaging is what
Yeah.
sells that
It's
product.
purified water, which is great. And actually, I've been in the spring water business. I've been in the water business my whole career. I was the first person that brought Fiji water into the West Coast back in 1994.
That's right.
along with David Gilmore, who was the founder, and a few people that he hired to help run the business. And I went to Essentia Water after that. And then after I left Essentia Water a few years later, I was approached by Icelanders to bring Icelandic Glacial into the United States. And I ran their business for 2 years out of my company. And then I was able to connect them with Anheuser-Busch, and we sold 38% of the company to Anheuser-Busch. And they took the product internally and had a multiple of different distribution variables that we allotted to them. And the Icelandic Glacial brand, under its own management, started working much more on an international basis in Europe and Asia. And the brand is just doing beautifully today. And then most recently, as I mentioned, for the past, whatever, 5 years, 6 years, I've been involved in path water. So I've always had a water as the centerpiece of my space, because I believe water is so important to good health. And it doesn't really matter
More and
what.
more people are understanding how important it is to drink great water now, right? And we can't rely on our normal water system. That's amazing. What about the sober, curious, sort of non-alcoholic drinks that are becoming more popular? I think that's a trend that's emerging. More and more people are saying, hey, I don't want to drink alcohol as much anymore, but I do want to go out and be social and feel like
I
I
think
have
there's,
a
yeah,
cocktail
there's
in my hand, Is that an area that you think is going to grow a lot over the next few years?
absolutely. I don't know how fast it's going to grow. The mocktails have been around for quite a while, but I think they're gaining a lot of momentum now. And I think there's a couple things that are behind that trend. The first is we're becoming a melting pot here in the United States. We have people from all over the world, larger Muslim populations, Buddhist populations that don't drink alcohol. And so developing products that they can use to help afford them the luxury of chiming in during the social aspects of drinking at a party, or having people over at your house, or going to someone's house, whatever, so that they don't feel ostracized because they're drinking plain water. There's many ways that that people can look like they're drinking alcohol, but they're really not. Um, that's one trend. A second trend is, and this is a real kind of a well-known one now, but there's a lot of data coming out around it, because marijuana has taken such a large piece of the beer business, as an example, for a way to get high these days. Um, the drug culture, if you will, with it brings a lot of youthfulness, and a lot of today's youth do not like the hangover that comes from alcohol consumption. So there is no alcohol. There's no hangover the next day if you smoke a doob or two, or if you do take an edible, or if you do some vaping and you have the psychotropic effects of THC, as an example. So although I am invested in that business. I'm a board member in a Canadian company in the cannabis space. I'm not a big promoter of it. I think everything in moderation. I think you asked me once before, what was my key to success relative to wellness, and did I have any routines and things that I do? I think the watchword for me has always been mediation. So if you mediate activity, meaning if you overindulge one night, have that last glass of wine, or that last schnapps, or something else, depending, you're on a ski slope, and that peppermint schnapps really smells good and it tastes good, and it's 11:30 or 12 at night, and you have two of those, you may not feel that great the next morning. So what I do in that circumstance, not coming off a hangover so much, but when I overindulge, I underindulge, and that brings the
Balance
needle back to
that.
the
Yeah.
center. It counterbalances, and then I try to stay in that counterbalance for a period of time, so my body gets back to that mediation level, and where it's comfortable, and all my parts are working correctly. Your microbiome in your stomach is doing well, your heart is relaxed, your head is relaxed, your blood pressure is down. So all those kinds of things are really important. Some people, I do take a large handful of supplements every day, vitamins, minerals, and different things. Particularly, I'm going to be 74 years old.
You look amazing for
Less,
74.
oh, thanks. Well, it's the filter on this screen. Um, in less than 30 days, and I still feel very energetic and very youthful. I still hit the golf ball much further than most of the people that I play with. And not that that's really something to be that proud of. I mean, I played golf my whole life, so I would kind of expect that. But golf is the kind of game you can hit the ball 150 yards 2 or 3 times to get to a par five. As long as you can chip and putt, you can play the game. So
Yeah.
just went to a funeral of an 86-year-old friend of mine the other day who played up until the last week before he died. And he was a pleasure to play with, a wonderful guy. And I think there's many, many, many people that'll be playing sports. Uh, Obviously not competitive baseball or even football, but certainly sports,
Activity is so important for longevity.
activity,
Yeah, and
activity.
mental stimulation. I think if you retire, so never retire, Jim, but when you retire, I think it's game over because most people don't get up with a purpose to live anymore. And that is so, so important is to still have a purpose. So I think being involved with boards and having, goals on a physical level, super, super important. So in your mind, there's customization of beverages are becoming quite a trend, or customization net in general, on nutrition and supplements. Do you think the beverage industry is going to work towards customization to beverages for people as well? And how do you see that, becoming more
Yes.
a trend and a reality?
The answer to your question is yes. There's a lot of trial that's happening right now in the formulation world, flavors and formulations that are bringing heretofore products that could never be offered in a beverage before into a finished beverage, whether it's a refrigerated product or it's a shelf stable. Most of them that are deleterious to produce or difficult to produce, like kefir or protein drinks, things like that, they typically are sold in the refrigerated environment because if they're natural or organic in their compound, you don't want to add a bunch of preservatives and things like that, which Robert Kennedy is hopefully, if he gets elected as the new health czar at the FDA, he's going to go after a lot of these beverages and food products that are in the market that are using lots of things that are just very unhealthy for us. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I'm sure you have, where you've cleaned vegetables in your sink, just fresh broccoli or lettuce and things, and you find all this wax and
Oh yeah.
pesticide coverage all over the products. And they have these sprays that you can get now that when you spray the vegetables, you can watch this coating come off. And we're eating this stuff, and when you go to Europe, they don't use pesticides, and other places around the world, they eat only fresh items, and when they go bad, they throw them out. So here, because our supply chains are so big and so cumbersome, you find a lot of these kind of backdoor ways of making products last longer, look better, because
No, but
Americans,
it's so bad for us,
it is, it
This
is.
our whole food system and drink system needs to have a complete overhaul in the US. And I really hope that that happens with, the new health initiatives that are coming on. So from a customization perspective, you think that people are going to be able to, have more choices or customized drinks, or do you think that's too far off still?
No, it's not too far. I mean, if you look at a lot of the drinks that are out today, drinks, both, 16 ounce or half liter bottles, or the little 2, 3, 4 ounce shots. You see them now with curcumin and turmeric and
Mm.
ashwagandha and a lot of I could list.
Probiotics and
There's a
microbiome
tons
enhancers.
of
Yeah.
probiotics, prebiotics. They're all health driven and for specific areas of needs that your body has at different times in your life. So I believe that opportunity is going to continue to grow dramatically, and as consumers become more knowledgeable about what they should be eating and drinking, I think there's really no cap on the entrepreneurial side of that and how you bring these products together. I think one thing of note that I've watched my whole life is I'm a big efficacy person. So, I mean, to be able to have a label of 25 items, whether they're a bunch of herbs and spices and things like that in your product, and then make these unbelievable claims about what's going to happen when you drink a 16-ounce beverage is ludicrous. And the amount of product that there is no um, uh, standard, if you will, for a lot of these items, and how much is a daily dose, for instance. We know what a daily dose of vitamin C is. It's 80 milligrams, right? So if you put 300 milligrams of vitamin C in, is it really a benefit? Most of the times you just urinate it out.
Yeah.
So your body can only absorb so much. So I feel the same way with a lot of these um, supplements that are in the market today, that people seem to either overload in their product or tout the benefit of, when they have just a smidgen in there. You know, we call it fairy dust in the industry, and a pinch of this and a pinch of that really has no major benefit,
Functional,
or
yeah.
even minor benefit. So I
Yeah.
think the industry is going to get better at that, and I think there will be a lot more testing of product to confirm the efficacy of it, and it'll be done by, you know, double-blind studies off the balance sheet of a single company, done by a third party at arm's length, and that will help standardize the industry, to make it so that people won't be able to make these outlandish claims. Because I mean, if you see some of these advertisements on TV today for nitric oxide products that are going to open up your capillaries, and your heart's going to be fabulous if you just take this product for 30 days, or joint compound relief products, or, you know, the amalgamation of high potassium and magnesium and sodium and blah blah blah, all these electrolyte packs. They're great, and most of them are flavored, so they taste good, and you do get an electrolyte load when you drink them. I think those stick packs are wonderful. I'm invested in 2 of those companies. So I think that's where the value proposition comes from. It's the convenience of packaging and the availability of them,
Mhm.
meaning a sachet or a stick pack can be fabulous versus a bottle
Yeah.
or a can,
You can take it
or
on a plane. Yeah.
you can take it on a plane, or a pill. I mean, capsules and hard pills, et cetera, are great for on the go consumption. And as long as you have water or something to wash it down and dilute it when it gets into your stomach, that's a great delivery system. So yes, the answer to your question is, I'm very bullish on the functional food and beverage space. Functional foods covers beverages. So
Yeah.
I think there's going to be a lot more of that. I'm also a huge believer in fresh. I'm a big believer in fresh everything. That's what we tried to provide with Suja Juice, where we took all of these
Cold pressed. Yeah.
amazing products and put them into an HPP environment, and squeezed and pressed out the benefits, and then spun it and put it into a bottle. And people were drinking these, and still are today, drinking these phenomenal green juices and stuff that just has amazing. You can taste the kale and the spinach and all
Yeah.
the other things that are
And
in
all
these.
that helps with your microbiome too, is just getting all that natural supplements, in from a natural perspective. That's so amazing. So as we're wrapping up here, what advice would you have for young entrepreneurs getting into the functional beverage space? If you can give them 3 or 4 tips that they should definitely consider, and I'm sure you can share where people can get a hold of you if they have questions. But looking back at your career, what advice, would you give to your younger self?
Well, I think I kind of loop back to what I said when we first started. Soft drinks are here to stay. The sugared soft drinks have been a tremendous. They've done a tremendous disservice to the population, not just domestically, but around the world, adding to the obesity and type 2 diabetes process. And I think, as I live my life, moderation is the key to success. So drinking 8 Diet Cokes doesn't make it any better than drinking 8 Cokes with sugar in them, in my opinion. There's no nutritive value in any of that stuff. So if you're going to drink something with nutrition in it. The answer to your question is, um, if I were starting a business today, I would, and I've done this myself. I would spend some time online, spend time talking to people when you have an idea, and share, try to extract, just topical and top line, no deep thought reactions to what you're thinking about. Does this idea really carry weight? Is it possible to manufacture it? What are we going to have to do to manufacture it? Do we need to invent the wheel, or is it readily available in food and beverage manufacturing today? What's the consumer going to think about it? Can I produce this product and put enough of it, an efficacious dosage in a food or beverage product that consumers are going to buy it, and they're going to buy it regularly? It'll become part of their staple purchasing list that everybody goes to the store with, instead of on a wish list or a happenstance if a product is sitting on an end aisle display. I would also think very hard about my own skill set. Do I have the ability to leave a corporate job after 20 years, as an example, being an inline manager of ABC Corporation, to actually start my own business and manage myself and manage others and be able to raise capital and develop a board and really understand the benefits of understanding the consumer, and what does that take in order to do that? You really doing a business plan, as an example. A lot of people don't do business plans. I've changed my whole way of doing business plans. When I used to write the 50-page, 12 pica type single line manuscripts of business plans in the old days, the reason for doing them, even if they're a 30-page PowerPoint today, is because it gives you the ability in your mind to think about
Think
these things
through things,
and then
yeah.
dump that onto a piece of paper or multiple pieces of paper and have others look at it, have you look at it. And it should be a working document that doesn't just get put into a file and never opened again, because you can see
Yeah,
how
you
you
went through that
historically.
thought process. You can see where,
Exactly.
yeah, what you need.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
So I believe having a really good business sense, a business plan, a financial plan, a product of value to the consumer. We don't need another soft drink. We don't need another a can of peas. Okay. So I mean, are you bringing something of
it's
note,
unique. Yeah,
something innovative, something? It could even be a niche product that could end up growing into a necessity. But make sure that it can stand on its own and it has a value
you should
proposition.
write a book, Jim.
Well, I've written 22 chapters already. I don't know if I'll ever bring it to market, but it was very cathartic, and most of it is just funny. I do think of myself as having a pretty good sense of humor. I like looking at the light side of life, and I've had some amazing funny experiences running my own company for years and having 23 people take the ride with me, with all these 2,000 entrepreneurs that I've worked with. And it's I've watched a lot of other people write books. I was the proofreader of the Zico book that came out called High Hanging Fruit, for Mark Rampola when he did it. And it's just recapping the story of how we built the coconut water business when nobody knew anything about coconuts, unless you lived in a foreign country or a place 10 degrees above or beyond the equator around the world. So, uh, and also to build a product, as an example, that has a 50% population that doesn't like the product and will never drink coconut water. It smells like dirty socks to them. So, that's a big deal to be able to build a brand when you have half the audience will never try your product. So,
Yeah, amazing.
yeah, it's very interesting, and understanding those things before you get started and you raid your Roth IRA account or your 401k or whatever, and you're going to dump all that into your entrepreneurial venture. If it fails, and it's about a 92% mortality rate that people really need to understand, and that basically means in the first year there's a 9 out of 10% chance, or 9 out of 10 businesses fail for a multiple of reasons, as I mentioned before: bad management, product that doesn't have value in the market, or not enough money. And so those are the three reasons why businesses fail. And so if you make it past that first year and you're that 1 out of 10 that makes it, 50% of those businesses fail in the second year. So if you get into your third year, you got a pretty good chance of having some level of success. Whether you ever sell your company is anybody's guess. And whether you build it to a $200 or $300 million business, you know how many of those are done every year? It's a very small number.
Not many.
So it's just like trying to go out to the NBA,
Yeah,
everybody in certain communities thinks that they're a great basketball player, but the rosters are not that big, and there aren't that many people that actually become NBA players. The same with the NFL. So it's you have to look at life with a real lens on and not let your ethereal abilities take you to a place that can end up hurting you in the long run. Little failures are important in life, and we go through those every day. Massive failures where you take investors' capital, your parents, your aunts and uncles, your sisters and brothers, you don't want to lose their money. So
Yeah.
thinking about those things before you start a business is really important. And I would venture to say that most people run away when they really think of the scariness, if you will, of starting your own business and what it really entails. Because if they understand it, they know the risk involved and they know that
Yeah.
it's not going to be an easy road.
I know. Definitely not for the faint of heart. I think we've discussed so much, and there's so many aspects, Jim, that we can go into and have a completely separate podcast. And I would love to have you back on if you'd be so gracious to do that, and we can
Love
maybe
to.
delve into those sections as well. If people do want to reach you, I know you're sort of retired, but if people are very curious and they feel like they need to talk to you, is there a way that they can reach you?
Sure. My email address is Jim Tonkin, that's Tonkin at outlook.com. My cell phone is 602-432-7992. You can text me anytime. I'm usually, most people that know me know I'm a very fast returner of queries. Whether I have the answer or not is anybody's guess, but I really do respect others, and I try my best when I'm available to get back to people right away. So Jim Tonkin at outlook.com or 602-432-7992, +1 if you're outside the US. And Liesl, thank you so much for inviting me to chat with you a little bit about wellness and the food and beverage space and my background. And I wish you the best of success in the future with Kalon Executive Search. And you've got an amazing business and a great smile. And I know you're going to continue to blow the socks off the industry. So best of luck to you as well.
Thank you. Thank you for your friendship. And it's been so great to get to know you over the past few years. And everyone in the industry admires you. So please don't go anywhere. And if you have any questions for Jim, please reach out to him. He's a wealth of knowledge. And Jim, I look forward to having you back on.
Thank you, Lisa. We'll talk to you soon, and best to your audience.
Thank you so much, Jim. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, you too. Bye.